All right, the quadratic formula. This is the last method we're going to learn in regards to solving quadratic equations. Let a, b, and c be real numbers such that a does not equal 0. The solutions of the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, are x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Highlight that, circle it, put some stars next to it. You're probably going to have a quiz over it. You will definitely be tested over it at some point in time. Memorize this. Now the discriminant is the part that's underneath the radical, the b squared minus 4ac part. The discriminant is used to determine how many solutions an equation has and if they're real or imaginary. So we know that quadratic equations can have 1, 2, or 3 solutions. 1, 2, or none. It can also have real or imaginary solutions. The discriminant will be able to tell you those things as well. You need to know which part the discriminant is, so we want to memorize this as well. Okay, determining your types of solutions. So as we said, the discriminant will tell you that. If you solve the discriminant, remember that's b squared minus 4ac, and it's greater than 0, that tells you automatically that you're going to have 2 real solutions, and we know that the graph of 2 real solutions has a graph that crosses the x-axis twice. If you solve the discriminant and it equals 0, you have only 1 real solution. So the graph may look something like this, where it only touches the x-axis 1 time. Lastly, if you solve the discriminant and it's less than 0, this tells you you're going to have 2 imaginary solutions, meaning the graph will never cross the x-axis. All right, on the next page, it says in exercises 1 through 3, find the discriminant of the quadratic equation and describe the number and type of solutions of the equation. Remember the discriminant, that's b squared minus 4ac. Now something that you know but perhaps have forgotten is that we know what a, b, and c are when we're given an equation in standard form. Your a, this is your b, and this is your c. And remember, all of those are the coefficients, not necessarily the variables. So b squared, remember whenever you plug in, you always want to use parentheses. Our b is 34 squared minus 4 times a. There's not a number in front of this b squared. Secretly, that tells us that there is a 1. And our c is 289. Now you can use your calculator to figure this out. Some of us are in the auditorium or in the small gym today, so if that's you and you don't have a calculator, you do have a phone, by all means use it. You can plug all of that into your calculator at one time and you should get equals 0. This tells me that we have 1 real solution. Now remember, I knew it was 1 real solution because the discriminant equals 0, it's 1. If the discriminant is greater than 0, we have 2 real solutions. If the discriminant is less than 0, I have 2 imaginary solutions. Let's take a look at number 2. So remember, when we work through these problems, we always want the equation to be in standard form. If it's not in standard form, we need to get it that way. Also, we want our a to always be positive. So in this case, my x squared, or my a value, is already positive. That tells me it would be best to move the right side of the equation to the left side. Remember, when moving things across the equal sign, all we need to do is change the positive negative sign. And now we have an actual equation. Again, plugging in, we now know what our a, b, and our c are. So remember, the equation is b squared minus 4ac. We'll plug in using parentheses. The b in this case is 8 squared minus 4 times our a, which is 1, and our c, which is negative 3. Again, plugging this into your calculator. If you have a calculator, you can do it all at once. If you have a phone, you probably need to break it up. But in the calculator, parentheses 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3. You should get 76. Okay, 76 is greater than 0. Whenever the discriminant is greater than 0, this tells you that you have two real solutions. Pause this video and do number 3 on your own. Okay, again, when we work these equations, we want them to be in standard form before we proceed. We also want our a value to be positive. It's currently positive. That tells me I should move the right side to the left. So when I do, I'll get 4q squared minus 3q plus 1 equals 0. I now have it in standard form. B squared, our b this time is negative 3, minus 4 times our a, which happens to be 4, times our c, which is 1. Again, plugging this into your calculator, you should get negative 7. Negative 7 is less than 0. Anytime my discriminant is less than 0, this tells me I have two imaginary solutions. Okay. Moving on, in exercises 4 through 7, solve the equation using the quadratic formula. So first off, we need the quadratic formula. From the first page, it is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to use that formula to solve the equations that we have. Remember, we know what our a, b, and c are. Fortunately for us, number 4 is already in standard form. So we're going to take our a, b, and our c and plug it into the quadratic formula. So negative, remember, when you plug in, always use parentheses. Our b, in this case, is negative 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So our b here is negative 7 squared minus 4. Our a is 1, and our c, negative 18. All of this over 2 times our a, which is 1. Okay, from here, we're just going to simplify. I know it looks like a lot. Negative times negative 7 gives me a positive 7, plus or minus. We're going to leave the square root for now. All right, again, you can use your calculator on your phone or your graphing calculator if you have one. Negative 7 squared gives me 49 minus 4 times 1 times negative 18. So negative 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 18. 121. So I have the square root of 121 all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay. Notice it is plus or minus, so I am going to do 7 plus square root of 121 is 11, divided by 2, and 7 minus 11, divided by 2 because it's 7 plus or minus the square root of 21, which we know is 11. 7 plus 11 gives me 18 divided by 2. That gives me 9. 7 minus 11 is negative 4 divided by 2. It's negative 2. So our x's here equal 9 and negative 2. Okay, moving over to number 5. Now remember, anytime we do these problems, they really need to be in standard form. We also want our a to be positive. Currently is. Let's move everything else. So I'm going to do w squared. My positive 4w will become negative, so negative 4w. My negative 1 will become positive, and it'll be equal to 0. So now I have it in standard form, remembering that we have a, b, and c right here. We're going to do exactly the same thing we did on number 4. We're going to plug it into the quadratic formula. Negative times b, which is negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b, so negative 4, squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, and c, which is 1, all over 2a, which is 1. Negative times negative 4 is positive 4, plus or minus, again, let's leave that square root for now. Plug this into your calculator, do it in your head however you need to. Negative 4 squared is 16, minus 4 is 12. All divided by 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, at this point we cannot take the square root of 12. So we're going to have to break it down using your factor tree like we did a couple weeks ago. 12 breaks into 3 and 4. 4 breaks into 2 and 2. So you guys know the story. Here I have two twins. We all know that one of them dies and the other makes it out. So I get 4 plus or minus the guy that made it out, 2 square roots of anything that's left. In this case, that would be the 3. All divided by that 2. This can be reduced a little bit further. This is like saying 4 divided by 2 and 2 square roots of 3 divided by 2. So as long as both of these numbers are divisible by 2, you can reduce it. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is just 1, so it leaves me with the square root of 3. Keep in mind those are two answers, 2 plus the square root of 3 and 2 minus the square root of 3. Pause this video and do number 6 and 7 on your own. Okay, again, we need these in standard form before we can proceed. We also want our a to be positive, so we're going to move this guy to the left. That'll make him 4z squared minus 7z. We'll move this 3 to the left. It'll make him positive. Plugging in, remember it is negative b, which is negative 7 squared. I keep saying squared, and that's not right. Sorry, negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7, now it's squared, minus 4 times a, which is 4, and c, which is 3. All over 2a, and our a here is 4. Negative times negative 7 gives me a positive 7. Plus or minus, again, let's leave that square root. Again, you can plug all of this into your calculator at one time if you'd like. It gives me 1. Divided by 2 times 4, which is 8. Now don't let this trick you because there is a square root of 1. The square root of 1 is 1. So I have 7 plus 1 divided by 8. And 7 minus 1 divided by 8. 7 plus 1 is 8, divided by 8 is 1. 7 minus 1 is 6 over 8. That does reduce to 3/4. Final answer, x equals 1 and 3/4. If you're confused at any point, stop this video and go back. We'll take a look at number 7. Alright, number 7 is currently in standard form, so we're good to go. We just need to plug it into the quadratic formula. So negative b, which is negative 32, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4 times our a, which is 2, and our c, which is 178. All over 2a, and remember a is 2. Negative times negative 32, positive 32, plus or minus the square root of negative 32 squared minus 4 times 2 times 178 gives me negative 400. If you're doing this on your phone, I would suggest doing this part first and subtract the rest of it. So negative 32 squared, and then subtract whatever 4 times 2 times 178 is. All of this divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, you guys know what happens whenever you have the square root of a negative number. That negative comes out as an I. So we get, also, the negative will come out as an I, and the square root of 400 is 20. So we'll get 32 plus or minus the square root of 400, which is 20, and the negative comes out as an I, divided by 4. Now remember I said as long as these two numbers are both divisible by 4, then you can reduce it. 32 divided by 4 is 8, plus or minus 20 divided by 4 is 5i. Keep in mind that this answer is the same as if I wrote it like this. 8 plus 5i, 8 minus 5i. And that's it. So if you have any confusion, go back and listen to it again. It's a very short video. If not, get started on your homework that's online.